Hello guys, I'm hoping that this is the correct thing to be on. So I don't know if I can see anybody's chat or anything. Is anybody in here? So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go on without further ado and hope that this is working correctly. And for those of you that don't know, my name is Shishi. I am the owner of Shishi's Aquatics. And today I wanted to go over how to set up your vinegar eel cultures. And because I've had a few questions recently, and it seems that it's kind of a gray area for a lot of people, that they order the vinegar eel cultures online and then they have no idea how to set them up and get them ready for harvesting. So I guess the first thing I'm going to tell you is vinegar eels are an excellent source of food for newborn fry. Typically, things like betta, for instance, betta fry are very, very, very little, and therefore they cannot eat most forms of like foods. So also on top of that, they don't eat pellets or anything like that. Like any of the like sinking foods or anything like that, they're not going to be big enough to eat it, nor are they going to have the ambition to eat it. And that is because they are little predators. So one of the best fast foods that I have found is vinegar eels, and one of the reasons I like them so much is because vinegar eels come up to the surface of the water, which is predominantly where betta fry hang out, is at the surface of the water, so it makes it absolutely ideal. And they can survive for about 24 hours or more in your tank water as well. So that's excellent, because then there's nothing, it gives the fry a lot of time to be able to consume the food, provided that you're not overfeeding. So typically when you get a starter culture, it will come in like a small container, not quite like this. You'll probably get it in like a heat sealed pack. But just for the purposes of this video, I wanted to show you this. And in here, you can't really see them, but in there are vinegar eels. And if the camera would actually focus a little bit on it, you might be able to see them. And even though the name suggests that they are eels, they're actually not. They're just a little nematode. So they, it's a very, very simple little organism, and I'm hoping that this is live actually. So I'm hoping that the Shishi's Aquatics is actually live on the correct area. So if I'm not, please forgive me. This is my first time hosting the event, so I'm hoping that this is correct. Otherwise I'm gonna have to start all over again and scrap this video. But I don't see any chat or anything like that either, so that's kind of frustrating. I have one person in here with me now, I believe, so hello. But yeah, yay, it's live, finally. I don't know if the beginning of this has even been recorded correctly, but we're gonna keep going with what I was saying. So for anyone who has purchased a vinegar eel culture, it will look like this. I mean, it will be in a little bag. It won't be in a 4-ounce deli cup, but just for the ease of the video, I've put it into a deli cup just to show what it is. So the vinegar eels are fantastic. I love them. And before anyone gets kind of concerned about vinegar eels and like, oh my god, is it a parasite? Is it gonna, you know, infect my fish's gills? Is it gonna eat my fish from the inside out? Am I gonna get sick? Are you like handling it? Are you gonna get sick from it? No, it's a very, very simple little organism. It is not a parasite, and it will not make you sick. It will not make your fish sick. The only time that there's a possible problem is if you're overfeeding, and it potentially could alter your aquarium water, but that's very unlikely, especially if you're keeping up with regular water changes. Anyone who has bred betta or is embarking on breeding betta, this is definitely one of the best fast foods you could give them. One of the things that I've seen as a mistake, like a common mistake that people have done regularly when used in vinegar eels, is that they actually just take it from like a bottle like this, and they just take it out of here and put it straight in the fish tank, which is a big no-no, because obviously that's vinegar. That is going to make your fish sick. You don't want to put vinegar in your fish tank at all. So I'm going to show you how to set up your vinegar eel culture, and without further ado, let's move forward. So again, just for the purposes of this video, I have a bottle, and I have kind of halfway filled with tank water, and it's very important that you use dechlorinated water or aged water. That's probably the best to use, is like week-old aged water, and that way there's no chlorine that's going to hurt the vinegar eels and make them crash. But you're going to want any kind of bottle. I like the neck bottles, and I'll show you why in a moment. And you're going to want about 50% of water, and then also you're going to need just apple cider vinegar. So it's going to be like a 50-50 mix of the apple cider vinegar and the water. And then you're also going to need some apples, some apple pieces. Now the apple pieces is just to feed them. And honestly, once this is set up, if you want to separate your actual culture, if you want to set your separate your starter culture into two, you can. It will take a little bit longer for it to become established, and don't be alarmed if your starter culture comes in and it doesn't look like there is any movement whatsoever in there. Don't be alarmed. Everything will most likely bounce back within a couple of weeks time. And the water, I really wish you could see, but the water kind of looks a little bit cloudy, and you'll see what looks almost like little tiny hair fibers, and they'll be wiggling, and those are the worms. If they're not moving, again, don't be too concerned straight off the bat. A lot of times I've seen it in shipping where they ship out, they get cold during shipping and they go into like a dormant phase. But the second that they get into your culture, and they're fed and they're warm, and they start bouncing back really, really fast. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to get my little funnel going here, and I am going to pop a hole in the top of this, because apparently I didn't do that yet. Now I'm going to fill approximately up to the neck here, and I'll show you once I pour it in. I realize that the camera angle is not the greatest. So once that's in, and I'm making a mess, which is fantastic, pour that in there. And actually I have a little too much in there. So now I have the bottle filled to just below here, and there's a reason for that, because obviously there's going to be a few more ounces that are going to be put in there. Now unfortunately I couldn't get this off. I do apologize about that. I tried to get it off, but it was just all sticky and gross. Now I'm going to pop in some apple slices, and I mean, I don't think there's really a general rule as to like if there's going to be too many apples or not enough apple slices in there. But you're going to want to make sure that you cut them small enough that they're going to fit into the neck of your bottle. Eventually they will sink. I actually might have to pour some more of this out because it's going to be too much still. It is too much. Just 1 second. The joy of doing things live. Okay, so now I'm gonna add the culture into this. There's a bunch of apple in there. This will be their food. So now I'm just gonna take my culture, which is here. I'm just gonna pour this straight in. Oh, and I'm making a mess again. I'm good at this. I'm good at making a mess. So that's that. So that's in there. The vinegar eel culture is in there also. And now basically what you want to do, unfortunately I have to lose some of this again. So now what I'm gonna do with this, all of the vinegar eels are in here. They're gonna eat off the apple. And remember, this is a 50-50 mix of the apple cider vinegar and the tank water or aged water. Personally, I find works best. And then you're gonna want to get like a piece of, it can be like a piece of filter media, a sponge, something like that. Preferably not a household sponge. You'd be better off using like aquarium-based sponges, just because there's no chemicals in them. Whereas literally every single household sponge you buy, even if it's straight off the shelf, has some form of chemical in it. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you open a sponge out of a packet from the store, they feel damp. And so heaven only knows what that is. I wouldn't want to put it in anything. I wouldn't want to put it anywhere near something that I'm feeding for my fish. So now you want to make sure that you cut your piece of sponge to fit in the neck of your bottle. And I'm just gonna, see, this is still a little bit too big, so I want to take a little bit more of the excess off. You want it to be snug, but you still want to make sure that there's enough room for the worms, for the vinegar eels to get through, because they're going to want to come to the surface, and I'll show you why in a second. So I just took a little bit more off of this. It doesn't have to be neat. It's just going to be popped into your bottle. And if you don't feel like it's quite snug enough, alright, so now I have this down. I don't know if you can see it very well because of the glare, but I have the sponge down to the line of where the vinegar is. And then what we're going to do with this section here is we're actually going to fill it with some more water. And what will happen is the vinegar eels, they have this little cycle that they go through where they'll eat, and then they have to come up and they have to breathe. So they'll actually come up through the sponge, and then they'll sit in the top. They'll sit in the top of the water, and this will allow the vinegar to be separate from the clean water in the top, so that you can harvest your vinegar eels and give them to your fish. Now, what I like to do is I like to take the vinegar eels out and then put them in even more tank water before I put them into the tank, just to dilute it down a little bit more. That's just my personal preference. I don't think you would necessarily have to do that, especially if you're making sure with fish such as betta, you have to water change them so frequently anyway. It probably wouldn't cause any issues to your water quality, but you've got to keep up on your water changes, obviously, when you've got fry. So the vinegar eels, they will actually eat the apples, and then they'll process through. So they'll come down, eat the apples, come up to the surface to get air, and then they'll come back down again. But in the top here of the bottle, where the water is clean, that's where you can harvest them from. And you should start seeing activity there. Most likely, within a couple of weeks, you'll start seeing a few up the top. You might even see a couple of hundred up the top. But it'll actually get so busy that I'll show you here. This is it looks kind of gross, so I'm going to forewarn you now. You see, I actually don't know how well you can see that, but there is like all this matter in here, and that matter is basically where this is sat for a long time. But that's the process. They come up, they eat at the surface, they come down, and then they get through life and death, should we say. They actually will end up dying in the regular water up the top. So it's very, very good practice to keep that water cycling out, in and out. I didn't, but the part of the reason was to show how they come up to the surface through here. And it's a really terrible camera angle. Let me see if I can move it. Let me see if that will show you a little bit better. So that's basically what they do. Now, again, there's many small fish that will actually really benefit from foods like this. Typically the very small fish. Betta, for instance, they won't need to eat for the first like 24 hours, 48 hours tops, because obviously once they hatch, they still have their egg yolk with them, and therefore they can survive for a few days just absorbing that back into their body before they actually are looking for food. But the vinegar eels are a fantastic first food for them. You can actually even use green water for the vinegar eels too. In that top section that I was telling you about here, you can actually use green water here if you want to. And then if you wanted to separate out your starter culture that you've gotten, you can just use the rest of what you have available, and you can divide it into any bottles that you have collected up in a 50-50 ratio. Pop your apples in there, and these go on for, I've had this culture going probably for about 2 years now, and you might actually be able to see through here how cloudy it is. And I'm not sure if you can actually see it or not, but you can probably see how cloudy it is, and all of the clouding is actually the vinegar eels. Obviously you're going to have to keep up with feeding them and making sure that they're fed, and periodically, again, just kind of swapping some of them out and just expanding them into different bottles so that you're trying to keep them clean as best you can. But these can last for, this one, I've had this one over a year, and I fed it, I think, one time after the initial setup. It's actually due to be fed again because, as you can see, the apple in the bottom is it's pretty disgusting. But this is fantastic because it is so minimal, and it's so easy to deal with, and it's so easy to use. With that, just that initial setup, your fish room will be set for all your new fry. It doesn't really matter what species they are. Obviously the bigger species probably aren't even going to bother with vinegar eels, but any of the small species will absolutely love them. Even guppies, or your nano fish, they like them too. And anything that gives, either gives birth to small fish or the fry are very small from hatching. The vinegar eels at like a maximum size are probably just a few millimeters long. They're really tiny, and you can visibly see the adults swimming, but you would probably need a microscope in order to see the to see the babies or the juveniles. And they're just such a fantastic thing to have in hand. Like, I really feel like every single fish room should have vinegar eel cultures going, if nothing else as a backup. Some fish are too small to even take baby brine shrimp before, you know, for probably a week or so before they can actually accept baby brine shrimps. And I know that betta, typically my betta that I've bred, typically 4 or 5 days is when I start introducing baby brine shrimp. But these are great to have so that you can alternate the feedings, so that you don't end up running into swim bladder disease for overfeeding on brine shrimp and so on and so forth. And they're typically very, very accessible. Most places you can get vinegar eels. They are obviously available on my website too. But they're relatively cheap, and the setup is not bad. I think I believe that the apple cider vinegar cost me maybe $5 most, and I mean that's like a lifetime supply for these guys. And if you just collect soda bottles, like your favorite sodas or drinks or water bottles, whatever it is that you drink, if you just collect the bottles, you can actually divide it out and share it out between all of them. And every so often, when you harvest from your culture, you can pop some more into each one of those bottles, and you'll constantly have a turning over culture supply, and also backup should something happen and these guys crash, which they're pretty bomb proof, to be fair. Very, very minimal. You pop them on a shelf and forget about them, and you can go back to them 6 months later and they're fine. So that's one of the best things about it, and one of the best things about them in general. They're very nutritious. They're packed full of goodies for your fish, and any fish that enjoys live foods from fry will love vinegar eels. So I really hope that showed you. Oh, there's one other thing that I didn't mention. I apologize. When you put your lid onto your culture, you want to make sure that you have a hole in the lid. Now, unfortunately, this has one of those silly plastic lids on it, and I couldn't do it. But you want to make sure that there's a small hole in the top, and maybe pop some like filter floss or something in the lid, just to make sure that nothing can actually get into it. I'm not so concerned about these guys trying to get out, because that's not going to happen. But just so that nothing else can get in there. And then when you pop your lid on, you'll have gas exchange, because obviously there is a process of decomposition in here, because the apples will ferment to a degree, and then obviously, you know, they do die. So there is a little process going on in there. There is a little circle of life happening, and obviously there is a factor of decaying in there too. So in order to help prevent like a toxic gas buildup in there, if you just pop a little hole in the lid, in your lid, so that the gases can escape and oxygen can get in, they'll be set. Obviously you don't want it to knock it over, but I mean, it's gonna be, this will set your fish room up for a while. I don't know how, I can't even get this back on, but there we go. But you want to make sure there's a hole in the lid, and then to make sure, I've never seen anything try to get into my vinegar eel cultures, but I'm sure there maybe fruit flies might be attracted to it. I've never had that issue, and I don't know if anyone else has, but I would definitely want to make sure that you have something in the lid there, just to make sure that nothing can get in there and you know, possibly contaminate your culture there. And then also, again, allowing the gas exchanges to happen. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple and easy to do, and your fish room will be set from there. So for this video, I think I'm gonna leave it right there, and thank you for joining me. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. either myself or my husband will respond to you. There are occasions where I'm not able to get to my messenger, so my husband will respond to you, and either himself, sorry, can help you, or he will make sure that he asks me to speak to you guys and answer any of your questions. For now, take care and happy fish keeping, and good luck with your fry, and for everybody, happy Easter, and we will be speaking soon. Let's do this again, and if there is a video suggestion, don't hesitate to put it in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.